My wife came home at 4 in the morning with her lipstick smudged and my brother's cologne on her dress. When I asked how their night went, she giggled and said Mark was such a gentleman. For walking her to the door, I pretended to believe her, just like I'd been pretending for the past 2 months. My name is Nick Hawthorne, and I'm a maintenance supervisor at Megamart. Not exactly glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps my hands busy while my brain works overtime. My wife, Melissa, works in HR at TechFlow Solutions, downtown. She's always been the social butterfly in our marriage, the one who lights up rooms while I fix the things that break in them. My younger brother, Mark, is 30, 6 years my junior, and has never met a responsibility he couldn't charm his way out of. He's got the kind of easy smile that makes people forget he's borrowed money he'll never pay back, and the kind of gym-sculpted physique that makes women forget he's never held a job longer than 8 months. The Friday night clubbing started innocently enough. Melissa's friend Tiffany had gotten divorced and needed a wing woman for her return to the dating scene. "Just us girls hitting the town," Mel had said, twirling in front of our bedroom mirror in a black dress that cost more than my weekly paycheck. But then Mark started tagging along. "He's like my brother, too," Melissa explained when I raised an eyebrow at this development. "Besides, it's safer having a guy around. You know how creepy some men can be at clubs." I wanted to point out that my brother was exactly the kind of guy she was supposedly being protected from, but I bit my tongue. Trust, right? That's what marriage is built on. The first few Friday nights, I didn't think much of it. I'd fall asleep on the couch watching Netflix and wake up to the sound of Melissa's heels clicking on our hardwood floors around 2 or 3 a.m. She'd kiss my forehead, whisper that she'd had fun, and stumble upstairs to bed. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't really asleep when I heard Mark's truck pull into our driveway. I kept my eyes closed and my breathing steady as I listened to them outside. "Shh, you'll wake Nick," Melissa's voice slightly slurred. "Nick sleeps very deep," Mark replied, and I heard him chuckle. "Remember when we were kids and I set off firecrackers in his room? Didn't even stir?" "You're terrible," Melissa giggled, and there was something in that giggle that made my stomach clench. It wasn't her usual laugh. It was softer, more intimate. I heard the front door open, then their whispered conversation in the hallway. "Tonight was—" Melissa's voice trailed off. "I know," Mark said quietly. "Me too." There was a pause that seemed to stretch forever. Then I heard Melissa's footsteps on the stairs, followed by the sound of Mark's truck starting up again. I lay there on the couch for another hour, staring at the ceiling and trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. But when Melissa came down for coffee the next morning, I noticed things I'd been blind to before. Her hair was mussed in a way that suggested more than just dancing. Her dress was wrinkled in odd places. And when she hugged me good morning, I caught a whiff of Mark's cologne mixed with her perfume. "How was your night?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Oh, same old club scene. Tiffany met some guy who claimed he was a doctor, but he kept calling a stethoscope a heart listener, so probably not." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Mark was actually really helpful. He scared off this creep who wouldn't leave us alone." "My hero," I said dryly. She shot me a look. "Don't be like that, Nick. He's family." Family. Right. The pattern continued for weeks. Every Friday night, Melissa would get dressed up, meet Mark and Tiffany at some trendy downtown club, and come home in the early hours of Saturday morning looking like she'd been through a washing machine. She started keeping her phone face down on the counter, something she'd never done before. She'd shower immediately when she got home, claiming she needed to wash the club smell out of her hair. Mark, meanwhile, had suddenly become scarce at family dinners. Our parents noticed too. "Where's Mark tonight?" Mom asked during Sunday dinner at their house. "He had plans," I said, not mentioning that those plans seemed to involve avoiding eye contact with me. "That boy needs to settle down," Dad grumbled, 30 years old and still acting like he's in college. If only he knew. The breaking point came during a family barbecue at our house. Mark showed up late as usual, but this time he brought flowers. For Melissa. "Just to thank you for being such a good friend," he said, handing her a bouquet of roses. Red roses. "For keeping me company on those Friday nights." Melissa blushed, actually blushed, as she accepted them. "Mark, you didn't have to—" "I wanted to," he said, and the way he looked at her made something cold and hard settle in my chest. I watched them throughout the afternoon, the way Mark would touch Melissa's arm when he talked to her, the way she'd lean in close to whisper something in his ear, the way they both looked guilty whenever I approached their conversations. That night, after everyone had gone home and Melissa was in the shower, I checked her phone. I know, invasion of privacy and all that, but sometimes you have to confirm what your gut is already screaming at you. The messages were all there, weeks of them. "Can't wait for Friday night." Nick's working late. Wish you were here. Stop looking at me like that at family dinner. Someone will notice. Last night was incredible. I set the phone down carefully, my hands surprisingly steady. So that was that. My wife was sleeping with my brother, and they'd been using their clubbing nights as cover. I could have confronted them right then. Could have stormed upstairs and dragged Melissa out of the shower for the fight of our lives. Could have driven to Mark's apartment and beaten the truth out of him. Instead, I sat down at my kitchen table and started planning. Because if there's one thing I've learned in my 38 years on this planet, it's that revenge is a dish best served with a side of poetic justice. And I had just the recipe in mind. 2 months later, everything changed with 4 little words. I was in the garage, pretending to organize my toolbox while actually researching genetic disorders on my phone, when Melissa burst through the door with a smile so bright it could have powered our house for a week. "Honey, I'm pregnant." She practically bounced on her toes as she said it, her eyes shining with excitement. In her hand was a pregnancy test, the little plus sign as clear as day. For a moment, just one moment, I felt a stab of something that might have been joy. We'd been trying to have kids for 3 years. We'd done the fertility tests, the ovulation tracking, the carefully timed romance that felt more like a medical procedure than making love. Nothing had worked. And now, suddenly, she was pregnant. Right after 2 months of Friday night clubbing with my brother. "That's wonderful," I said, setting down my wrench and walking over to her. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. "I'm so happy for us." She squeezed me tight. "I can't believe it finally happened. Dr. Martinez said it might take years or might never happen at all, and then—" "When did you take the test?" I asked. "This morning. I've been feeling queasy for a few days, and my period was late, so I thought maybe—" She pulled back to look at me, tears of happiness in her eyes. "Are you excited? I know we'd kind of given up hope." "Of course I'm excited." I kissed her forehead. "Have you told anyone else yet?" "No, you're the first. I wanted to tell you before anyone else." She paused. "Well, except Tiffany. She's the one who convinced me to take the test. She said I looked different lately." "I'll bet she did." "We should call the doctor," I said. "Set up an appointment. Make sure everything's okay." "Already did. I have an appointment Thursday morning." She grinned. "I can't wait to see your mom's face when we tell her. She's going to cry." She probably would. Mom had been not so subtly hinting about grandchildren for years. "There's just one thing," I said carefully. "Something we should probably discuss?" Melissa's smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" I took her hands in mine, looking directly into her eyes. "It's about Mark." Her face went very still. "What about Mark?" "His illness," I said simply. The color drained from her cheeks so fast I thought she might faint. What illness?" "You mean he never told you?" I frowned, as if genuinely confused. "That's strange. I thought you two had gotten pretty close lately, with all those Friday nights out." "Nick, what illness?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. I sighed, as if reluctant to share bad news. "It's genetic. A chromosomal abnormality that runs in families. Mark found out about it a few years ago when he had some health scares." This was, of course, complete bullshit. Mark was as healthy as a horse and twice as dumb. But Melissa didn't know that. "What kind of abnormality?" she asked, her hands trembling in mine. "It affects cognitive development, physical growth, immune system function. Any child of his would have severe complications." I shook my head sadly. "The doctor said any baby with his genetic markers would likely have developmental delays, frequent hospitalizations, shortened lifespan. It's why he's never gotten serious about anyone. He doesn't want to pass it on." Melissa's face had gone from pale to gray. She was doing math in her head. I could see it. Calculating dates, timelines, possibilities. How would we know if our baby has it?" she asked. "Genetic testing," I said. "We can do it early in the pregnancy. Don't worry, though. The chances are incredibly slim. It only affects direct offspring of carriers, and Mark's the only one in our family who has it." She nodded slowly, but I could see the panic building behind her eyes. If the baby was Mark's, which based on the timeline and her reaction, it almost certainly was, then in her mind, our child was doomed. "We should get tested," she said quickly. "Right away, as soon as possible." "Are you sure? It's still early, and—" "I'm sure." Her voice was shrill now. "I want to know everything's okay. I need to know." I squeezed her hands. "Of course, honey. Whatever makes you feel better. I'll call Dr. Martinez and see if we can move up the appointment." That night, I lay in bed listening to Melissa toss and turn beside me. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. Then again and again. She ignored it. The next morning, she looked like she hadn't slept at all. dark circles under her eyes, pale skin, shaky hands as she tried to drink her coffee. "Are you feeling okay?" I asked. "Just morning sickness," she said, but we both knew that wasn't it. Her phone buzzed again. This time I caught a glimpse of the screen before she flipped it over. M calling. Mark, wondering why she wasn't answering. Probably confused about why his Friday night partner had suddenly gone radio silent. Over the next few days, Melissa's anxiety reached fever pitch. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, jumped every time her phone rang. She'd start to answer calls from Mark, then hang up before connecting. She spent hours on WebMD, researching genetic disorders and early pregnancy testing. "Nick," she said one evening, her voice small and scared, "what if something's wrong with the baby?" I put down my newspaper and pulled her onto my lap. "Hey, everything's going to be fine. We'll do the testing and you'll see. Our baby is going to be perfect." Our baby. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Thursday morning arrived, and we sat in Dr. Martinez's office as she explained the genetic testing process. "Given your family history concerns," she said, "we can do a comprehensive chromosomal analysis. It will test for a wide range of genetic abnormalities, including any hereditary conditions that might be present." Melissa gripped my hand so tight I thought she might break my fingers. "How accurate is it?" she asked. "Very. Nearly 100%. We'll also be able to confirm gestational age, due date, all the standard markers." Dr. Martinez smiled. "And if you are interested, we can determine paternity as well, though that's usually only requested in special circumstances." I felt Melissa's entire body tense. "Paternity?" I asked, as if the thought had never occurred to me. "It's a simple addition to the genetic panel. Some couples request it for medical record purposes, especially when there are questions about inherited conditions from the father's side." "That might be helpful," I said thoughtfully. "You know, just to have complete medical records for our child." Melissa made a small sound, almost like a whimper. "Is that something you'd like to add?" Dr. Martinez asked. I looked at Melissa. Her face was the color of old newspaper. "What do you think, honey?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded weakly. What else could she do? Refusing would be tantamount to a confession. "Excellent," Dr. Martinez said. "We'll have results back in about a week." The longest week of Melissa's life was about to begin, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. The week between the test and the results was like watching someone slowly drown in their own guilt. Melissa barely ate, barely slept, and jumped at every sound. Her phone, which used to be permanently attached to her hand, now sat untouched for hours at a time. Mark, meanwhile, had started showing up at my workplace. "Hey, Nick," he said Tuesday afternoon, appearing in the break room where I was eating lunch. "Have you seen Mel lately? She's not returning my calls." I looked up from my sandwich, chewing slowly. "She's been pretty tired. You know, pregnancy and all." His face went through several expressions: confusion, concern, and something that might have been fear. "Pregnancy?" he repeated. "Oh, you didn't know? We're having a baby." I smiled. 8 weeks along, according to the doctor. I watched him do the math. His face went pale as he realized the timeline matched perfectly with when their affair had started. That's great, man. Congratulations." His voice sounded strangled. "Thanks, we're really excited." "Well, I am. Mel's been a little worried about genetic issues, but I keep telling her everything will be fine." "Genetic issues?" I set down my sandwich and looked at him seriously. "Mark, can I ask you something? Have you ever thought about having kids?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I mean, someday, maybe. Why?" "It's just, with your condition and all, I wondered if you'd considered the implications." "My condition?" He looked genuinely confused. I stared at him. "You haven't told anyone, have you? Jesus, Mark, that's dangerous. What if you got someone pregnant without them knowing?" "Nick, what the hell are you talking about?" I lowered my voice, glancing around the break room. "The chromosomal thing. The genetic abnormality. Mom and Dad made me promise not to discuss it, but given Mel's pregnancy, I figured you should know we're doing testing." Mark's confusion deepened. "I don't have any genetic abnormality." "Mark." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Denial isn't going to help anyone. The doctors were very clear about the risks to any potential offspring." "What doctors?" "Nick, I've never been diagnosed with anything like that." I studied his face for a long moment, then sighed. "Maybe it's better if you don't remember. Head trauma can affect memory, and you did have that motorcycle accident a few years back." "I never had a motorcycle accident." "Mark, you're scaring me. The memory loss is worse than I thought." I stood up, gathering my lunch. "Look, just be careful, okay? If you ever do get involved with someone, make sure they know about the risks." I left him sitting there, staring after me with his mouth hanging open. That evening, Melissa's phone rang during dinner. Mark's name flashed on the screen. She stared at it like it was a snake, letting it go to voicemail. "Aren't you going to answer that?" I asked. "I'm eating," she said quietly. The phone rang again, and again. Finally, I reached over and answered it myself. "Hey, Mark, what's up?" "Nick, I need to talk to Mel. It's important." "She's not feeling well. Morning sickness, you know how it is." I paused. "Actually, maybe you don't know how it is. Sorry, that was insensitive." "Nick, what you said today at your work?" "Look, Mark, I really don't want to discuss your medical issues over the phone. If you want to talk about it, we can meet in person sometime." "I don't have any medical issues." "The denial is really concerning, brother. Maybe you should see someone, a neurologist or—" He hung up. Melissa was staring at me with wide eyes. "What was that about?" "He's been trying to reach you. I think he's confused about some things." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Honey, there's something I should tell you. Mark's been having some memory problems lately. The genetic condition sometimes affects cognitive function." She went even paler, if that was possible. "He doesn't remember having the condition?" she whispered. "It comes and goes. Some days he's fine, other days he's completely confused. It's part of the syndrome." I squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry I didn't mention it before. I didn't want to worry you." That night, I heard her crying in the bathroom, soft, muffled sobs that went on for nearly an hour. The next morning, she called in sick to work, and the day after that. By Thursday, she looked like a ghost of herself. "Mel, you need to eat something," I said, setting a plate of toast in front of her. She pushed it away. "I can't. I keep thinking about—" She stopped herself. "About what?" "Nothing. Just— What if something's wrong with the baby?" I sat down beside her. "Hey, look at me." I tilted her chin up. "Whatever happens, we'll deal with it together, okay?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the test, Dr. Martinez's office called. "Mrs. Hawthorne, this is Janet from Dr. Martinez's office. Your test results are in. Can you and your husband come in this afternoon?" Melissa's hand shook as she hung up the phone. "What did they say?" I asked. "Results are ready. We have an appointment at 2. She spent the next 4 hours pacing around the house like a caged animal. Every few minutes, she'd stop and put her hand on her still flat stomach, her face crumpling with what looked like grief. At 1:30, we drove to the doctor's office in silence. Melissa stared out the window, her hands clenched in her lap. In the waiting room, she kept checking her phone. No messages. Mark had finally stopped calling. "Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne?" A nurse called our names. We followed her back to Dr. Martinez's office. The doctor was smiling, which I took as a good sign, for the baby's health anyway. "Well, I have good news," Dr. Martinez said as we sat down. "Your baby is perfectly healthy. No genetic abnormalities, no chromosomal issues. Everything looks exactly as it should." Melissa let out a shaky breath. "No abnormalities at all?" "None whatsoever. Whatever genetic concerns you had, you can put them to rest." "And the paternity test?" I asked casually. Dr. Martinez's smile faltered slightly. She glanced between us, then down at the papers in front of her. "Well, that's where things get a bit unusual." Melissa went rigid in her chair. "The test confirms that Mrs. Hawthorne is approximately 8 weeks pregnant, which matches our earlier estimate." Dr. Martinez cleared her throat. "However, the paternity results show that Mr. Hawthorne is not the biological father." The silence in the room was deafening. "I'm sorry," Dr. Martinez continued. "I know this must be shocking. Sometimes there are errors. But we ran the test twice to be sure." I turned to look at Melissa. Her face had gone beyond pale now. She looked green. "Honey," I said softly, "is there something you need to tell me?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "The genetic markers indicate the father is a close relative of yours, Mr. Hawthorne," Dr. Martinez said, consulting her notes. "A brother or cousin, based on the chromosomal similarities." Melissa made a sound like a wounded animal. "I see," I said calmly. "Well, that certainly explains a lot." And then my wife, the woman who had sworn there was nothing between her and my brother, who had looked me in the eye for 2 months while carrying his child, finally broke down and told the truth. "It was supposed to be nothing," Melissa sobbed, her words tumbling over each other in a desperate rush to get them out. "Just dancing. Just fun. I never meant for it to happen." We were still in Dr. Martinez's office, but the doctor had quietly stepped out to give us privacy. Melissa had her face in her hands, her whole body shaking. "How long?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. 2 months, maybe 10 weeks. I don't know exactly when it started. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Nick, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did it anyway. She flinched like I'd slapped her. It wasn't planned. We were drunk one night, and Tiffany left early with some guy, and Mark and I were alone, and you decided to sleep with my brother. Don't. Her voice was barely a whisper. Please don't. Don't what? Tell the truth? Because that's all I'm doing, Mel. Finally getting some truth in this house. She was crying harder now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. I wanted to tell you. So many times, I almost... But you didn't. Instead, you let me believe we were finally having the baby we'd been trying for. You let me get excited about becoming a father. You are going to be a father. Biology doesn't matter. You'll still... I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Don't you dare try to make this about me raising my brother's bastard child. The word hung in the air between us like a physical thing. I know you're angry, she said, reaching for my hand. You have every right to be, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can... Where is he? What? Mark, where is he right now? She glanced at her phone. I don't know. I haven't talked to him since... Since when? Since last weekend. Since you told me about his condition. She paused, confusion flickering across her face. Nick, is Mark really sick? Because he called, and he sounded so confused when I finally answered, like he didn't know what you were talking about. I looked at her for a long moment, then started laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind of bitter, hollow sound that comes from the very bottom of your soul. You want to know the beautiful part about all this? I said. Mark isn't sick. There's no genetic condition, no chromosomal abnormality, no risk to the baby's health. Her face went through a series of expressions, confusion, hope, then dawning horror as she realized what I was saying. You lied? I lied. Just like you lied. The only difference is, my lie was to catch you in yours. She stared at me, mouth open. You made me think the baby would be sick? You let me suffer for a week, thinking I was carrying a child who would die young? Have developmental problems? Yeah, I did. And you know what the really screwed up part is? You were more worried about the baby being Mark's than you were about telling me the truth. That's not, isn't it? You could have confessed the affair the minute I mentioned genetic testing. Could have saved yourself a week of agony by just being honest. But you didn't. You let me schedule the paternity test. You sat through the appointment. You were willing to let me find out this way rather than tell me yourself. She had no answer for that. How many times? I asked. What? How many times did you sleep with him? She closed her eyes. I don't know, a lot. Most Friday nights and some other times when you were working late. In our house? Sometimes? In our bed? Nick, please. In our bed, Melissa? Yes, she whispered. I nodded slowly. Okay, that's what I needed to know. I walked toward the door. Where are you going? She called after me. To have a conversation with my brother. Nick, wait. Let me explain. Explain what? That you've been screwing Mark for 2 months? That you're carrying his baby? That you've been lying to my face every single day? I turned back to look at her. What exactly is left to explain? I love you, she said desperately. I know that sounds crazy, but I do. What happened with Mark, it wasn't about love. It was just what? Just intimacy? Just fun? Just something to do on Friday nights when your boring husband was home watching Netflix? You're not boring. I'm done. I opened the door. Dr. Martinez will probably want to reschedule your future appointments. I won't be coming to those. Nick, please, don't do this. Don't throw away 8 years of marriage over a mistake. I paused in the doorway. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. This was a choice. You made it every Friday night for 2 months. I left her there, crying in the doctor's office, and drove straight to Mark's apartment. He answered the door in his underwear, looking like he'd been sleeping off a hangover. Nick, what are you... I punched him in the face. He staggered backward, blood streaming from his nose, and I followed him into his apartment, closing the door behind me. Jesus Christ, what the hell? He pressed his hand to his nose, trying to stop the bleeding. Congratulations, I said. You're going to be a father. His face went white. What? Melissa's pregnant. 8 weeks along. Genetic testing confirms you're the father. He sank onto his couch, still holding his nose. Oh, damn. Oh, damn. Nick, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been having a great time screwing my wife. It wasn't supposed to happen. We were drunk, and you kept being drunk every Friday night for 2 months? He couldn't meet my eyes. I tried to stop it. After the first time, I told her it was a mistake, that we couldn't do it again. But you did. She said she was unhappy, that things weren't good between you. So you thought you'd help by sleeping with her. I was drunk, and she was there, and... He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. Nick, you have to believe me. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, and now she's pregnant with your child. He put his head in his hands. What are we going to do? We? There is no we. There's you, and there's her. And there's the mess you've made. She's my sister-in-law. She's family. She was family. Now she's just the woman who's carrying your bastard. He flinched. Don't call the baby that. Why not? That's what it is. An illegitimate child born from an affair between my wife and my brother. I leaned forward. Tell me something, Mark. When you were inside her, did you think about me at all? Did you wonder how I'd feel when I found out? Stop. Did you laugh about it? About how stupid I was, sitting at home while you two were... Stop. He jumped up from the couch. It wasn't like that. We never talked about you. That's almost worse. We stared at each other across his messy living room. My brother, the man I'd grown up with, played catch with, taught to ride a bike, looked up to despite everything. The man who had just destroyed my marriage. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now? Now you get to live with what you've done. Both of you. Are you going to tell Mom and Dad? I smiled, and it must have been a terrible smile because he took a step back. Oh, Mark, I'm going to tell everyone. A word travels fast in a family, especially when that word is pregnant and affair, and your son Mark is the father. I started with my parents, drove straight to their house from Mark's apartment and found them in the kitchen, Mom making her famous pot roast, Dad reading the newspaper at the table. Nick, Mom smiled when I walked in. What a nice surprise. Is Melissa with you? No, Mom, Melissa's not with me. Actually, that's what I need to talk to you about. Something in my tone made Dad look up from his paper. I told them everything. The Friday night clubbing, the pregnancy announcement, my fictional story about Mark's genetic condition, the paternity test results, Melissa's confession. I watched my mother's face crumble and my father's expression turn to stone. That can't be right, Mom whispered. Mark wouldn't... He's your brother. DNA doesn't lie, Mom. Dad folded his newspaper with sharp, precise movements. Where is he now? At his apartment, probably trying to figure out how to explain this. And Melissa? I don't know. I don't care. Mom started crying then, the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that come from watching your family implode. Dad got up and put his arms around her, but his eyes stayed on me. What do you need from us? He asked. Nothing. I just wanted you to hear it from me before Mark comes crawling over here with his version. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But I was lying. I knew exactly what I was going to do. By Sunday, the news had spread through our entire extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone knew that Mark had gotten his brother's wife pregnant. The family group chat, usually reserved for birthday reminders and shared memes, had exploded into a war zone. Aunt Carol. I can't believe this is happening in our family. Uncle Jim. Always knew that boy was trouble. Cousin Sarah. Poor Nick. How could they do this to him? Mark tried to defend himself, sending long, rambling messages about how sorry he was, how it was a mistake, how he never meant to hurt anyone. But the damage was done. He'd gone from the charming family screw-up to the family pariah in less than 48 hours. Melissa, meanwhile, had started calling me nonstop. Dozens of calls, hundreds of text messages, all variations of the same theme. She was sorry, she loved me, she wanted to work things out. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I went to work on Monday morning and told my boss, Mr. Dunham, that I needed some time off to deal with a family situation. Take all the time you need, he said after I explained the basics. And Nick, I'm sorry this happened to you. You're a good man. You deserve better. I spent that week methodically dismantling the life Melissa and I had built together. I moved all the money from our joint accounts into a new account in my name only. I contacted a lawyer about divorce proceedings. I changed the locks on our house, and I started making phone calls. The first call was to Melissa's boss at TechFlow Solutions. Hi, this is Nick Hawthorne, Melissa's husband. I wanted to let you know that she might be dealing with some personal issues over the next few weeks that could affect her work performance. Oh, is everything okay? Well, she's pregnant, which is good news, but there are some complications with the paternity that are causing stress. I didn't say anything untrue, I just let him draw his own conclusions. The second call was to Tiffany. Nick, why are you calling me? I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? For being such a good friend to Melissa, for encouraging her affair with my brother, for helping them sneak around behind my back. Silence. I didn't. You knew, Tiffany. You were there every Friday night. You saw them together. Nick, I never encouraged. Did you know she was pregnant? More silence. Did you know she was pregnant with my brother's baby when you convinced her to take that pregnancy test? I hoped maybe it was yours. But you knew it might not be. I'm sorry, she whispered. So am I. The third call was to Mark's gym, where he worked part-time as a trainer. Hi, I'm calling about Mark Hawthorne. I'm his brother, and I wanted to let you know he's been having some health issues that might affect his ability to work safely with clients. What kind of health issues? Memory problems? Confusion? Sometimes he doesn't remember things clearly, which could be dangerous in a fitness environment. By Wednesday, Mark had been suspended pending a medical evaluation. Thursday, I called Melissa's parents. Nick, dear, how are you holding up? Her mother asked. I'm managing, Mrs. Chen. I wanted to talk to you about Melissa's situation. We heard about the pregnancy. Congratulations. Thank you, but there's more to the story. I told them everything, just like I'd told my parents. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Mrs. Chen, are you there? I'm here. Her voice was cold now. Is this true? The paternity test doesn't lie. Oh, Melissa, she whispered. What have you done? Friday, exactly 1 week after the truth came out, I came home from work to find Melissa sitting on my front porch. She looked terrible, pale, thin, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. The locks, she said when she saw me. You changed the locks. It's my house. It's our house. My name is on the deed, too. Was. I had the lawyer draw up papers. You can sign them, or we can let the divorce court sort it out. She stood up as I approached the door. Nick, please, can we just talk? We did talk. Last Friday in Dr. Martinez's office, remember? I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Mel. I'm done. There's a difference. I lost my job. I paused with my key halfway to the lock. What? TechFlow let me go. They said it was downsizing, but I know someone told them about what happened. I didn't say anything. And Mark got fired from the gym, and both our families won't speak to us. And Tiffany won't return my calls. She was crying now. Nick, I have nothing left. No job, no family, no friends. I'm pregnant and alone, and I don't know what to do. I turned to look at her. You should have thought about that before you slept with my brother. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Every Friday night for 2 months, you chose him over me. You chose to lie to me, to sneak around, to carry on an affair under my nose. You chose to let me believe I was finally going to be a father when you knew the baby wasn't mine. You can still be a father. Biology doesn't... Stop. Just stop. I opened the door. You want to know what the worst part is? It's not the affair. It's not even the pregnancy. It's that you were never going to tell me. If I hadn't made up that story about Mark's genetic condition, if I hadn't pushed for the paternity test, you would have let me raise his child thinking it was mine. She didn't deny it. That's not love, Melissa. That's not even basic human decency. That's just selfish, cowardly bullshit. I went inside and closed the door, leaving her standing on the porch. Through the window, I watched her sit back down on the steps, put her head in her hands, and cry. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the sound of her giggling with Mark in my hallway, the smell of his cologne on her dress, the way she'd looked at him when he brought her those red roses, and I went upstairs to pack the rest of her things. 3 weeks later, I threw a party. Not a celebration, exactly. More like a family gathering with a very specific purpose. I invited everyone, my parents, Melissa's parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, neighbors, co-workers, even Tiffany, though I doubted she'd show. The invitation was simple. Join us for a backyard barbecue to discuss some important family news. I spent Saturday morning setting up tables in my backyard, stringing lights, preparing food. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, came over around noon. Need any help, dear? She asked. I think I've got it covered, thanks. I heard about what happened with Melissa. I'm so sorry. Word had spread through the neighborhood, too. In a subdivision like ours, where everyone knows everyone else's business, a scandal like this was front-page news. These things happen, I said, flipping burgers on the grill. Still, it must be hard, having it happen with family. The hardest part is over. People started arriving around 4. My parents came first, looking grim but supportive. Melissa's parents showed up a few minutes later, her mother clutching her purse like a shield. Nick, Mr. Chen shook my hand. How are you holding up? Better every day. More relatives arrived, then neighbors, then a few people from work. By 5 o'clock, my backyard was full of people making awkward small talk and shooting sympathetic glances in my direction. At 5:30, Melissa arrived. She looked better than she had the week before. She'd gained back some weight, and the dark circles under her eyes weren't quite as pronounced, but she still looked fragile, uncertain. Nick, she said, approaching me by the grill. Thank you for inviting me. Wouldn't be the same without you. She glanced around at all the people. This is a lot of people. Family's important. Is Mark coming? He should be here soon. As if on cue, Mark's truck pulled into the driveway. He got out slowly, looking around at all the cars like he was walking into an ambush, which, in a way, he was. Everyone's here, Melissa said nervously. That was the idea. Mark made his way through the crowd, getting cold stares and turned backs from relatives who had once welcomed him with open arms. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Nick, he said when he reached us, thanks for including me. Wouldn't want you to miss this. At 6 o'clock, I turned off the grill and called for everyone's attention. If I could have everyone gather around for a minute, I said, raising my voice. I wanted to thank you all for coming today. The crowd formed a loose circle around me. Melissa and Mark stood off to one side, looking increasingly uncomfortable. As most of you know, I continued, the last few weeks have been challenging for our family. Some things have come to light that I felt everyone should hear about directly from me. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. 3 weeks ago, I learned that my wife Melissa is pregnant. A few people smiled and started to clap until they noticed that no one else looked happy about this news. I also learned that the baby she's carrying isn't mine, it's my brother Mark's. The silence was deafening. For 2 months, while I was working late and trusting my family, Melissa and Mark were having an affair. They used their Friday night clubbing as cover to sleep together, including in my house, in my bed. Melissa made a small sound of distress. When Melissa told me she was pregnant, I was happy. We'd been trying to have children for 3 years, but something felt wrong, so I made up a story about Mark having a genetic condition that would affect any children he might father. I looked directly at Mark. The panic on Melissa's face when I mentioned genetic testing told me everything I needed to know. Nick, please, Melissa whispered. Don't do this. Do what? Tell the truth? Isn't it a little late for you to be worried about that? I turned back to the crowd. The paternity test confirmed what I already suspected. My wife has been carrying my brother's child while lying to my face every single day. The crowd was completely silent now, everyone staring at Melissa and Mark with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. I wanted all of you to hear this from me, I continued, because family is built on trust and honesty. When that trust is broken, when family members betray each other in the most fundamental way possible, there have to be consequences. We're sorry, Mark said suddenly, his voice cracking. Nick, we're both so sorry. Are you? Because from where I stand, it looks like you're only sorry you got caught. That's not true, isn't it? You had 2 months to come clean. 2 months to tell me what was happening. Instead, you let me find out through a paternity test. I looked around at all the faces staring back at me. Family, friends, neighbors, people who had known us for years. I'm not telling you this to humiliate them, I said. I'm telling you because I want everyone to understand that actions have consequences. When you betray the people who love you, when you lie and sneak around and destroy trust, you don't get to just say sorry and move on. Melissa was crying openly now, and Mark looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. Melissa and Mark made their choice. They chose each other over family loyalty, over honesty, over basic human decency. Now they get to live with that choice. I set down my beer and looked directly at both of them. You're not welcome in my house anymore. You're not welcome at family gatherings I'm attending. You want to be together? Fine, be together. But you don't get to pretend this didn't happen, and you don't get to ask for forgiveness until you've actually faced the consequences of what you've done. The crowd began to disperse after that, people talking in hushed voices as they made their excuses and headed home. Some stopped to shake my hand or offer words of support. Others just left quickly, uncomfortable with the raw emotion of what they'd witnessed. Melissa and Mark stood frozen in my backyard as the party dissolved around them. Nick, Melissa said one last time, please, I know I don't deserve it, but you're right, you don't deserve it. I walked away from them, into my house, and closed the door. Through the kitchen window, I watched them stand there for another few minutes, talking quietly. Then Mark put his arm around Melissa's shoulders, and they walked to his truck together. As they drove away, Mrs. Patterson appeared at my back door. "You okay, honey?" "Yeah," I said, surprised to find that I actually meant it. "I think I am." "That took courage. What you did out there?" "It took 3 weeks of planning," she laughed. "Well, it was effective. I don't think those two will be showing their faces around here anytime soon." She was right. Within a month, Mark had moved to another city. Melissa went with him. I heard through family gossip that they'd gotten an apartment together, that Mark had found work at a gym across town, that Melissa was working as a receptionist somewhere. I heard she had the baby, a girl, healthy and beautiful, according to my mother, who saw pictures on Facebook before Melissa blocked the whole family. I never asked to see the photos. 6 months later, I signed the final divorce papers. A year after that, I started dating again. Nothing serious, just dinner and movies with a woman named Janet, who worked at the bank and didn't know anything about my family drama. Life moved on. But sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that moment in Dr. Martinez's office when Melissa's face went pale as she realized her lies were catching up with her. The moment when she understood that her choices had consequences, that betrayal comes with a price. And I'd smile. Because some revenge is a dish best served cold. But the best revenge is simply letting people live with the consequences of their own actions. Melissa and Mark wanted to be together so badly they were willing to destroy a family for it. Now they had each other and nothing else.